assuming David moves ahead, we can do his draft presentation first as kind of intro piece. Depending on also how the time goes, I think it would be nice to use our full time on Monday if we finish up.
Good morning. Welcome to Books at the Bottom of the Stairs. My name's Lorene. Today I've got two things I'm going to do. But you know what? I hate when people announce what they're going to do. You're going to be surprised. Okay. Lovely flowers. The radio is off. The clock might chirp. We will hear some, I can't remember what it is at 12 o'clock. Canadian geese, I think, hoot. I think all the distractions are done. Steve's settled in his office. The cats have had their snack, and I think we're good to go. So, Five Little Indians by Michelle Good, I believe, is on Canada Reads. And, you know, I meant to check that. I think I said that last week. I didn't check it. And I'm glad I didn't, because one of the things I really like to do is read a book in isolation from the media, from the newspapers, from the book reviews, and so on. So, not entirely sure how this book came under my radar. I think I noticed it last year with the Indigenous reading group that I sort of troll. And no, I don't mean troll, lurk. What's the right word? I just kind of, see what their reading list is for the year and just choose a few books from it. This book, even last year, I thought to myself, I'm not sure I want to read it. It just looks like it's going to be a hard one. And I had come off of reading some stuff from Richard Wagamisi and from Thomas King on Indian on Vacations, and there were a couple of memoirs that I had read, and just a few other things had sort of gone under my nose. And I thought, I'm just not really ready for anything more in the way of despair. So I think my instincts were right. On the other hand, this book, which is for my Quaker book club, is not a book about despair. There is despair. There's deep despair. There's deep trauma. There's deep sorrow, grieving, loss, all the negative things that a community experience and individuals experience. But it's also a book of incredible hope and redemption, but not in the way that you or I might initially think of as redemption. I guess when we think of redemption, we think that the hero comes back to the world and becomes one with the community or something. And in this book, we explore 5 different children who experience the Indian residential school system from quite an early age on. And each one has a redemptive journey that is successful in their own terms, not necessarily in the community's terms, or let's just say the white community's terms, what you or I, because I don't think I have any First Nations people watching, have a certain set of preconceptions as to what constitutes a successful life, or a successful community, or a successful family, or a successful role as parents, or so on. These people in this book each find a way through to living life with hope in a way that is certainly in their own terms and not really concerned with what the outer, bigger world has to say about it. And I think one of the reasons for that is that they've been stripped of community so early in their lives that they have completely different reference points as to what would be good choices and bad choices. I mean, when you're a young child, no parenting, no nurturing, no community, because you're not really allowed to talk to each other. You certainly can't talk to your brother or sister who's on the other side of the room. Your language is taken away. There's so much that's taken away that even basic nurturing is taken away. So what becomes your individual tool for surviving that kind of environment is hopefully successful. And it was successful in such extreme terms that you take it forward with you into adult life, even though it might be a negative, successful survival tool. And I remember, I've been with a psychologist a few times in my life from not a great parent. And so I'm going to just wax, a wax therapeutic for a moment. And the child picks up survival tactics that will work for their individual situation. And there isn't a whole lot of discernment in that process. If it works, you do it again. And quite often you don't explore it to see whether there are other things that could work. Or if the situation starts to change, you might adjust it a little bit, but you don't really adjust it a whole ton because you need that safety thing. So I think that's what children in these kinds of situations do. They come up with their safety strategies and don't let go of them. So eventually we've got 5 adults who are hanging on to those things or hanging on to the shit that got them there. So we've got people who are working with alcoholism or self-harm or denial, rage. And as we witness their early lives, we can certainly understand why. I think one of the things that this book that is just so excellent is it takes the narrative and entirely puts it into the mouths and the eyes and the minds and the hands of the children who are experiencing residential schools. And I think because the author, Michelle Good, is of Cree background, I think this is one of the voices that really comes forward in the telling of this story. I think a lot of the stuff that I've encountered has come through the media in some way or another, documentaries or news specials or books written about, and not necessarily the leaders or the directors or the script writers or so on necessarily are they First Nations people. So getting that first-hand account, although this is fiction, you getting that first-hand account is just a different experience as a reader or a consumer of this information. I think this is a 5 out of 5. If it doesn't make Canada Reads, I just don't know what. I don't know what the other books are. I don't care what the other books are. This is absolutely one of the best books that I have read in probably a decade, especially on this topic. I mean, maybe I could make an argument that just, across the board I've read other books that are better, but I'm not sure I could even do that. Certainly with respect to this topic, it is outstanding. And, I'm pretty fond of Louise Erdrich, who's a First Nations writer, Richard Wagamisi, Thomas King, Michelle's Good. Now she's like totally got 5 stars all around. Maybe it's more like 25 stars because she's just done such a brilliant and sensitive job of telling the story. I'm not really going to tell you the story because I think my interpretation of it would diminish it. You're going to come across 5 very young children, Kenny, Lucy, Clara, Howie, and Maisie, and their trauma. And I just think that my telling you about it is going to take away from the nuances that you're going to encounter in this book. I just flat out recommend it. There's somewhere in the world, I must go back through my old books and say, there was a book I came across, I think it was Angela Davies, and it was, my goodness, what was it called? Class? I have to look it up. Anyways, it was also one of the very few books where I think everyone should read it. And it had to do with the Black women's suffragette and coming up into, or they're not coming up into equality with their white women and colleagues. That's not a very good explanation, but anyways, Angela Davies has written a book that I think everyone should read. This is a book that I think everyone should read, and I'm going to stand by that firmly. So I think that's all I'm going to say. It's like saying too much could ruin reading this book experience for you. So totally recommend this book. I don't know what else she's going to read. I believe that she's writing this as she is a more mature woman. She's written other creative things in terms of short stories and poems and essays. This is her first novel, and I wonder whether her writings have been brought together in an anthology or something. That's something to look for. I'll keep my eyes peeled. So the other thing I want to talk to you about is sort of how a book comes into my life and what I do with it. Because, as I say, this book came to me from another reader's book club's list, and just on the surface I thought, no. And I'm glad I'm glad someone else pushed me into reading this book. And I think what happens is when I'm kind of searching for books, that's kind of the process, is someone will recommend, or I will see it on a list, or I have about 15 BookTube reviewers that I will check up on periodically. And I also have the magazine Hornbook that is more for middle reader group, or young adult readers. And every once in a while the Canadian Book Center puts out a magazine on the best of recent publications and so on. So those two magazines are the only ones that I really look for. So I'm not really sure how books kind of come under my nose other than that. And what I tend to do is listen to the reviewer, and I have years and years of just listening to that. So it's just a great big list. Just goes on and on. Maybe something in the back I might write if it's a mystery, or if it's a middle reader book, or an adult book, or fantasy. But basically it's just the title and the author's name, and that's it. Then as time goes past, I check the library, and then sometimes I check Goodreads if the library doesn't have it. Every once in a while on Goodreads, you see, if you liked this, try that. So sometimes I will do a little bit of a rabbit hole there, but generally not. And beyond the blurb, I just sort of have an initial reaction, yes or no, and put it on hold at the library if I can. And then if I can't get it at the library, I will just occasionally notice that other book reviewers are also mentioning it. So what was one that came through not so long ago? Oh, the House on the Cerulean Sea was one that more than one booktuber had mentioned. So I thought, oh, well, several people like that. But I don't go to the New York Book Reviews list, or I think there's one called NPR. I'm not sure about that. So it's kind of funny how these books, they just kind of turn up. It's more like the books are attracted to me in a way. And I mentioned a little bit where are we in the winter? In the winter, I had a couple of short spells of books that had come together with themes, like the one about hotels, or there was another one around mysteries involving, I can't remember. I guess that was also hotels. Funny about that. So it seems like these books just kind of rise up. The other thing I often do, and I don't know if you do this at the library, I look at what hasn't made it back onto the shelf. Someone's gone and pulled a book, and just in our library quite often they ask you not to reshelve a book. They are doing surveys to see what does get pulled and so on. So yeah, if there's something on a table or on a shelf, I quite often pick that up. 9 times out of 10 I take it home. I really do that in the children's section where they've got things on display. I feel guilty because I think, oh, those books are meant for the children. I shouldn't be taking them. But yeah, I adore those books. So I'm a bit of a takeaholic when it comes to that. The other thing I don't do, and I don't know, someone made a comment on a video a few months back, and I really had to think about this. She was not, I'm sorry, not a she, I don't really know who it was. The writer was suggesting that I hadn't really done a book a good service because I had not listened to reviews about what the writer had meant in the writing of that book. And so one thing I don't do is I never watch writers' interviews. I have gone to writers' reading from their books a few times, and that's either sort of killed it for me, as in Margaret Atwood, or really enchanted me, like Helen Humphreys. That's about the only time I encounter an author is at a public reading. And I don't look online for it. I don't read the magazines that are interviews with writers. And I just want the book to speak to me. I'm not really interested in the writer. And I know, especially in our modern times where we get to know more about a writer than in previous generations. So we all know about J.K. Rowling, and but then there was Roald Dahl, who was a bit of a misogynist, and I have to say that if I didn't know that, I probably, well, Roald Dahl's books I just don't like. J.K. Rowling's books so far I'm 50-50. But if I didn't like it, I just wouldn't ever think about what an author has to say about their writings. And I sure don't read critical literature about writers. So I don't know if you did this in high school, but or more so in university, where you'd have to be commenting on a play of some sort, and or a book, or a and you would go to the library, and then you would read the critical literature that had to be about that play and what it meant and what its metaphors were, and blah 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 blah. I hated that, just hated it. And so I would read one on a book I hadn't read. I would find that more interesting. Anyhow, I just find myself not interested in what the world has to say about a book. I try to read my books in isolation from others. And I have discovered that there's one or two people in my life that, some of them you trust for recommending a book. Oh, it's an owl. Hoot-a-doot-doo-doo. Get a sandwich. So the other people who I definitely won't read what they recommend. There's other people where it's kind of 50-50, and I have one person in my life who not only knows, what the book was about and what the author was about and who the publisher was, and basically, everything about the backstory about the whole thing. Sometimes that can turn me right off a book because I just, I don't care about that, and I find that just trivializes my experience. Isn't that weird? I mean, I don't know how you guys do these things. It'd be interesting to find out how other people kind of approach the book, not the reading experience as in I read in a couch with a blanket, but more like how do the books kind of come into your hands, and what that process is like. And so I think a lot of other people will be more influenced by what's on the bestseller list. Now, I've done that whole shkaboggle, and I do have an announcement that in June I am going to be reading the backlist for the Newbery Awards. And I tend to, when it's an award, that also doesn't influence me as a rule, except for the Newberys and the Prince Awards. Now, the Newbery is for books written for readers between the ages of, let's just say, 8 to 14. I don't actually know. And I thought that I was doing a really good job of picking it up. I would read the winner and the runner-ups, and I thought I was doing a fairly good job of keeping up with things, but I was on a roll for about 7 years, and then somehow it all slid past. So I'm something like 11 years behind. I guess because I was reading quite often, a book like this one's got several winning stickers on it. So I'd see Newbery winner and, not realize. I don't know what I was doing. I wasn't careful about it. I just thought, I'm on top of things. So in the month of June, I am going to take several years worth of Newbery winners and runner-ups, and I'm just going to focus on those. So I am going to focus on the years, I think I'm going to go with 2004, 2005, and possibly 2006. So that will be about 12 books. And that's all I'm going to read in the month of June. Well, I might, you never know. Never say never. And that will start to get me closer up to date. I'm kind of 2009 and 2010 I'm good for. So if anyone wants to read along with me, that would be great. And I'm not sure how to do that because I'll work on it, figure out whether we can get some kind of a chat going in a different medium and just chat about the different Newbery books and what we think about it. You can pick your own years and we can just have a gas. So that's it for me. I hope all your reading dreams and adventures continue to come true, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.